At the beginning, we see our main protagonist, whose name is Yagiri, currently on a school trip riding the coach, but he has fallen asleep. While sleeping, Yagiri is in a dream about his past, where we see a younger version of himself, walking in a corridor of a secret underground facility, where he was raised as a smelly lab rat. Just like the bitch from Stranger Things. We see bullets flying in all directions, but my bro is like Neo from the Matrix, and doesn't give a single shit about these bullets. And he starts calling out to his foster caretaker, who he calls his mother. She is known as Miss Asaka, and Yagiri is super mad right now, as someone has taken his mother hostage while pointing a gun. At this moment, his mom gets worried and tells Yagiri to stay back, while saying she's sorry to the boy. At this moment, the person with the gun starts to make fun of the 11-looking Stranger Things nerd, and tells him he's nothing but a worthless little orphan, who has nothing left now. And just before the thug pulls the trigger, suddenly Yagiri looks at the culprit's disgusting ugly face, and uses a special instant death ability, which eliminated the thug's life without Yagiri even touching him at all. This shocks his mother Miss Asaka, and just then the anime switches scenes back to the bus journey. And here a girl named Tamachika Nura is shouting at Yagiri and tells him to wake the f*** up, as the bus they are riding is currently being isekai'd off into a strange world. But Yagiri still fails to wake up. Moments after, Yagiri finally awakens, and asks Tamachika what the hell happened while he was asleep. And she yells in his face again and asks Yagiri how he was just sleeping through one of the most tragic events in human history. And right then, Yagiri realizes that he's in a different universe, as some crazy dragon type thing is currently attacking their school bus, and many of the students have already been eliminated by the mythical creature. And Tamachika tells him that the wyvern or dragon thing is ridiculously powerful, and ever since they reincarnated it has been taking out students one by one. After that, Yagiri finds whatever he can to scare the creature away, so he picks up a random microphone and dashes it at the creature. But obviously it didn't do jack shit to the wyvern, and it only made the dragon get extremely mad at Yagiri and was about to end their whole isekai careers in seconds, as it charges up a fireball in its mouth, all while Tamachika hugs onto Yagiri for dear life, squeezing her melons against his body. But just as it was going to blast them like Daenerys Stormborn, Yagiri simply looks at the dumb dragon right in the eye, and within a second, the giant overpowered creature drops to the floor, and has been eradicated from its own world by this scrawny Stranger Things kid from Japan. And after he tells Tamachika that she owes him some cheeks for saving her life, and after he plays some Super Mario like an absolute boss, and has nothing to worry about. After that, Tamachika tells Yagiri that if he doesn't put away the Game Boy, she won't let him squeeze her soft melons ever again. So he puts it away, and she starts to explain what the hell happened to their school trip. And here, Tamachika tells Yagiri that while the bus was heading through a tunnel, as soon as they came out the other end, the whole scenery changed and they arrived at a beautiful meadow. And some random, rude and very entitled fairy goddess named Sion appeared on the bus and welcomed them all to her world, which pisses off the school's headmaster, and as soon as he smelt Sion's hand, he vanished into thin air. She warns everyone on the bus that her hand will make any one of them disappear like she's wielding the Thanos gauntlet, and that if they don't listen she will make another person smell her disgusting hands and see if they can take her stench. After that, she starts to troll the entire class on the bus and told them all that she is a SSS rank level mage and the most overpowered goddess on the island, and that her anime power level is over 9,000, just as a pop culture reference joke. But no one even laughed, which annoyed the goddess Sion, and she told them it would be wise for them to laugh at her jokes from now on. Otherwise they won't last very long in this world. After, she calls them all a bunch of disgusting muggles that possess no kind of magical power, and that after being isekai'd, it is forbidden to be in her world without having magic, as the whole point of this strange world is to level up and to test each student, and to take on the strongest creatures with their magic, to see who will become worthy of being her successor. And just then, she made everyone on the bus glow up, along with a holographic stats screen. And here, just tells them that the games will begin shortly, as their first test is to defeat the mighty godly dragon, which nobody is able to ever defeat before. But Tamachika complains to the goddess, saying that she doesn't even have a stats screen and she also isn't glowing like the rest of the students. Tamachika notices how a few others are also not glowing, like the bratty popular girl, Shinazaki, a boy called Kuryu, and of course, Yagiri, who was fast asleep during the whole isekai event, and our MC has no f***ing clue he has been taken to a completely new world. One of the girls tells the entire class that the dragon is approaching shortly, and the dragon seems to be over level 100, making it 100 times more powerful than any of these students, so they get scared and ask the goddess to reincarnate them back to Japan. However, the annoying school jock of the class, named Yazaki, who thinks he's the Justin Timberlake of Japan, steps up to the class and tells them they have no choice but to eliminate the dragon and complete their first test to becoming a first-class mage, which is all he wants to do, especially as Yazaki has been gifted with the general class, giving him powerful strength and abilities even at level 1. After his speech, all the gifted individuals step off the bus to wait for the dragon encounter and ultimately slay the beast to complete the first isekai test. However, the General Yazaki tells the 4 weirdo muggles who have not been blessed with any magic to stay on the bus, as they can't help defeat anything in this world, and he blocks off the door to the bus, and all the other students who are gifted make their way to the forest and wait for the overpowered dragon to arrive. At this moment, the dragon appears, but as we know, Yagiri uses his insanely unfair cheat skill, which lets him basically one-punch man anything using only his eyes, making him more OP than Saitama himself. After seeing the beast fall to the ground like a Wiki-rank peasant, Tamachika asks Yagiri if it was him who killed the dragon like that, without even touching it. But he denies this and said that he had nothing to do with it, and tells Tamachika that he doesn't even have any magical power, as he's a lonely loser nerd. So how could a guy like him defeat a dragon boss? And just then, she remembers how Yagiri is the most worthless student who just sleeps all day, so what he is saying must be true. When the 2 of them step off the bus, they notice something flying in the air above, and it turns out to be their classmates, who came back to see if the dragon had eliminated the students with no magic. But to their surprise, the dragon was dead already, and they spot the bratty and annoying Tamachika and the sleepy head Yagiri down below. After they land on the ground, and they tell Yagiri and Tamachika about their cool magical isekai skills, and each of these boys has a specific role to play. The chubby fatso, named Damon, is a healer, Higashida is a powerful fire-blazing hero, and Yoshiaki is a necromancer. Damon is mad that Tamachika is alive as he can't troll her and turn her into a zombie, using his healing magic and combined with the necromancer. He could have raised her back from the dead, but here the hero guy explains how he only came back to use the necromancer ability on Tamachika, to clap her cheeks out after raising her from the dead, as she would never let him touch her in class or go near him, so maybe her zombie version would let him. But here Tamachika tells the hero to f*** off, calling him the ugliest person in the class. So he displays how strong he is compared to her, showing off his insane fireball ability, and threatens Tamachika, requesting to let him smell her feet, otherwise he will eliminate both of them. But right then, Yagiri tells the dumb hero boy that he's actually weaker than he thinks, and points his scrubby chubby finger at him, and tells him to drop dead. They all start bursting out laughing, and think Yagiri is just trying to troll them. But a few seconds later, the fireball hero guy falls down instantly, and has been eliminated by Yagiri, without him even touching him, shocking the 2 other dweebs, as they witness their friend perish into nothing. And finally, shutting his big mouth once and for all. His necromancer friend starts crying about his loss, and so he asks the fatty healer to heal the hero dude. But Yagiri points a finger at the necromancer guy, and he gets wiped out just like the hero, and the only one left is the chubby healer, who tries to heal his 2 buddies, but reviving or healing magic also doesn't work on people who have been targeted by Yagiri's power. After, Mr. Fatso tells Yagiri how unfair his power is, and that he might just be the most overpowered thing in the whole anime universe, and we should just end this anime recap right now, because Yagiri can just one-hit kill anything he wants to. But Yagiri tells the snobby little dwarf that there is actually one thing in this world that can counter his instant ability, but it's definitely not gonna be him. And that's when he finally gives up, and tries to be friends with Yagiri and approaches him with friendly intent. But Yagiri knows when someone has intentions to kill him and explains how his other power is a special sense to know when someone wants to attack him. And this makes the healer boy fall to the ground, and he begs the demon lord of this world to erase Yagiri, as he's just too strong for anyone. After, Yagiri asks the little salad dodger nerd why he's so excited about this, and what a demon lord even is. And that's when the healer tells Yagiri that this is not the first time he was reincarnated into this world. And he explains how not long ago, he and his 2 other friends were summoned here to the kingdom of a man to defeat the demon king, but they failed, so that's why they are sent back here again. But Yagiri has already eliminated his entire crew, so they are all doomed. However, Yagiri doesn't believe him, as he never saw him and the others missing any school days. But the healer tells him that this is because in the magical realm, it seems they were here for months, but as they traveled back to Earth in the real world in Japan, It was only a few hours that they were gone, so that's why it seems like he's lying. However, Yagiri prepares to end this boy's whole career, but just then, the boy promises to be his loyal servant and guide him through this other world and help him find the demon lord. After that, he tells Tomochika that they will need to hunt down this demon king and end it off so he can go back to their world, and he can finally relax in peace and chill with his video games and hot Cheetos, watching anime recaps. However, Tomochika is surprised that Yagiri is helping her, and he tells the girl that he's only protecting her as he remembers the soft feeling of her chest when she tried waking him up on the bus, which makes her extremely mad as she thought he was just a nice guy without any other intentions. However, Yagiri loves big juicy jugs just like all of us and is definitely a man of culture. On the other hand, we see Sage-shin squirming around in her bed while waiting for her attendant, Yoichi, to come make a report to her. He explains that 4 people died in the first Sage test, including 2 unblessed people and 2 S-rank ability holders. This makes Shin shocked for a moment, but she decides to procrastinate like y'all procrastinate your assignments and says that it shouldn't be something worth worrying about before lying down once again. After that, Yagiri and Tomochika decide to go to the nearby city to see if they can meet up with their classmates. They arrive just before the city gates are being closed and manage to get in even though they don't know the language of this world. Soon, a senior officer walks up to them and it turns out he can speak their language. Yagiri explains that they split from their group and are now looking to meet up with them. The stuck-up officer says that he has been ordered to not interfere with the Sage candidates, but there's nothing telling him to help them either. He says that their classmates have already moved on to their next destination, and that's all he is willing to offer them. But then he looks at Tomochika and says that only she can stay at his place for the night if she wants to. But Tomochika instantly grabs Yagiri's hand and runs away from there saying no thanks. Yagiri asks her about what's up with her and she says that she was worried he would send him to the underworld because of his rude behavior. Yagiri tells her to stop acting as if he is some kind of homicidal maniac, but she says that she is surprised that he doesn't know that he's exactly just that. With that, they start looking around at the structures and people of this fantasy world until they encounter a cute cat girl named Mayuryu, who offers to help them for free. They ask her why she is doing that and she explains that her goal is to date a Sage candidate, and that's why she is trying to become friends with as many male candidates from the Sage exam as she can. She says that she heard that they are prone to simping for cat girls like her and are usually really powerful and rich as well, so she is banking on her race and cute face. They decide to go along with her as she shows them around, and Tomochika ends up buying a bunch of clothes as well. But by nightfall, it ends up just as Yagiri expected it to, as they find out that the cat girl is actually part of a gang of bandits who surround them and plan to sell them off as stress relief slaves. After confirming that they are up to no good, Yagiri begins the slaughter by telling everyone behind him to die and then starts picking the ones in front of him one by testing his ability on them. He tests out if he can make certain body parts of them to die only instead of putting them down totally, and keeps doing it until only the cat girl and the leader of the bandits is left behind. After that, he tests some delayed functionality by telling them to die and lets them run off for a little bit before the ability kicks in and sends both of them to Hades as well. After taking care of them, they both decide to skedaddle out of there, but they get stopped by the knights in the area. Their captain, Edelgard, asks them what happened there and reveals that they saw the men around them collapsing on the floor out of nowhere. Yagiri asks them why they didn't help them if they were watching them, and she reveals that they were planning on following them once they got captured and following these goons to their base and capturing their leader. She also tells them to not act big as they are blessed with the Saint's protection, which makes them immune to attacks by them. Just then, her vice captain speaks up and says that according to his appraisal skill, these two don't have any blessings from the Saintess. Hearing this, the captain says that it would be hard to believe that they are responsible for these people collapsing and lets them go. The vice captain apologizes for causing them trouble and shows them a fancy hotel to stay the night at to show his gratitude for forgiveness. At the hotel, Yagiri books 2 separate rooms for them and once in the room, Tomochika wonders if Yagiri is interested in her romantically. Just then, she feels a cool breeze and looks up to find a fat floating ghost in the air. At first, this shocks Tomochika, but then she takes a close look at the ghost's face and wonders if she is her elder sister. But the ghost speaks up and says that she is called Makamoko, wife of the Danara School's founder's son and the distant ancestor of Tomochika. She further adds that she is her guardian spirit and is tasked with the duty of the restoration of the Danara School's dynasty. Tomochika asks why she didn't show herself earlier, to which Makamoko replies that she was afraid of Yagiri as she might have gotten obliterated if he got shocked and decided to get rid of her accidentally. She then asks Tomochika to explain her existence to Yagiri the next day so she can show herself without worrying, and then tells her that she will protect her from supernatural threats and that she is the one who protected her from getting that blessing from the saintess as well, because once you accept it, you become a puppet to her. She further adds that her wish is for Tomochika to return to her real world, and to make that happen, she will pass on the secret techniques and abilities of her family to her so she can fight on her own as well. The next morning, Tomochika walks down and meets up with Yogiri and asks him if they would be chasing after their classmates right away. Just then, the concierge walks up to them and introduces herself as Celestina. It turns out this hotel is a first-class establishment for rich people that takes care of anything and everything they request of them as long as they can pay for it. Yogiri asks her for help with locating their classmates, and she gives them a map to the royal capital and 2 tickets for a train headed there. She says that according to their information network, their classmates are making their way to the capital through the forest while slaying local monsters to grind some levels. Yogiri also gives her all of their gold and valuables to invest in some form of high-yielding accounts, and she prepares some items including a charger for Yogiri's Switch and translations to help them on their journey as well. After that, they board the train and head to the capital, and on their way, Tomochika also tells Yogiri about Makamoko and they chill out. Tomochika eventually ends up sitting beside Yogiri while cranking his charger while wondering about their classmates when Yogiri suddenly grabs her and ducks down as a powerful slash attack cuts their roof over their head in one go. The train conductor tells everyone to calm down and to make their way to safety as they spot a robotic alien called Aggressor who is invading their world, fighting a sage named Santaru. Their battle looks something out of this world, with each of them throwing mountain-leveling attacks at each other. Tomochika asks Yogiri if he's going to put them both down as they came in his way, but he says that that's not a reason to kill someone. He says that he has to set up a clear standard so he doesn't end up killing innocent people for small things like annoying him and such, as that's unfair. Soon, the sage and the aggressor's battle take them near Yogiri, and the sage, being the stuck-up piece of ass that he is, kills a lot of train passengers behind them, saying that they are just collateral damage to their fight, and that Yogiri and Tomochika should be bowing their head down in front of his mighty sage ass. This annoys Yogiri enough to turn the sage's life switch off, and seeing this makes the aggressor really afraid of him. He completely surrenders in front of the opus protagonist and offers to help him in any way he can. Yogiri asks him about ways to return to his original world, and the robot says that he only knows how to go back to his own world and can't take him there because he's too dangerous for one, and secondly, he hasn't brought his real body here, so he can't really take objects out of this world with him anyways. Besides that, he tells Yogiri that if he has enough mana and the right coordinates, then he can certainly go back to his real world. Yogiri says it's alright and tells him to guide him once he has the mana and coordinates, and the robot happily agrees. To make the most out of it, Makamoko also asks for a shape-changing gear weapon from the robot to help Tomochika with her fights. On the other hand, we see the knights in the city taking one of the goons who lost his eyesight after Yogiri killed them to an immortal vampire sage named Lane. She tries to heal the eye by reconstructing it from scratch, but it still doesn't restore its functionality. She also tries turning the goon into her underling by biting his neck, but that still doesn't work. But then someone breaks into their room, and it turns out to be a hero who is supposed to be fighting monsters and aggressors. The hero, Ein, says that he must put an end to the tyranny of the sages and uses his special attack called a plane and 2 towers to blow the whole place up, but it doesn't do any damage to the vampire sage, as she says that if it were to be so easy to end her life, things would have been so much better. She then says that she's too bored to deal with him and simply kicks him out of her tower without killing him. After that, she tells the knights to follow Yogiri and find where he is, and then heads off to meet Sage Shin and talks to her about this instant death ability guy. Shin says that she would prefer if Lion didn't interfere with the sage candidacy tests, but if she takes care of the calamity called darkness for her, then she will allow it. Lion agrees and tells the captain of her underling army called the Immortal Corps, Masayuki, to go to the city of Hanabusa as she might need them there. Meanwhile, we see Yogiri and Tomochika making their way to the nearest city from their train wreck, which happens to be Hanabusa as well. It turns out to be a pretty modern city with tall skyscrapers and constructions resembling modern-day Japan. While walking through, Makamoko notes that instead of being protected by physical walls, the city is surrounded by a protective barrier that keeps monsters out. They soon reach the first-class hotel that Celestina recommended to them, and after walking inside, coincidentally meets up with one of their classmates named Yuuki, who's now wearing some fantasy clothes. Tomochika asks him what he was doing there, as the others should still be in the forest working on their levels, but he says that he moves separately from them as he has a far superior and more efficient way of leveling up. He then introduces his harem of bodyguards consisting of 5 women whom he chose from his sea of girlfriends. Yogiri wonders what he was up to, and Tomochika explains that he has always been popular among girls due to his good looks, but there seems to be something more at play here. Just then, Yuuki turns to her and asks her if she would like to be his mistress, making her so dry, the Sahara Desert becomes jealous of her. She asks him what makes him so confident, and he explains that he has been blessed with one of the strongest classes in this world known as Dominator, which allows him to turn weak opponents into his servants. It turns out, when Yuuki and the other classmates were together grinding in the forest, everyone tried to avoid him due to his class. But then Haruto approached him and revealed that he is a consultant class. He tells him about the hidden details of his Dominator skill and suggests a plan that he found out after watching the Shield Hero anime. He tells him to buy up weak-leveled servants and then make them fight on his behalf to gain experience for leveling up. This pyramid scheme of a leveling idea resonated with him and his desire to have a harem of his own, and it led to this situation. After hearing him out, Tomochika rejects him and says that she would stay with Yagiri, and they both walk away. Meanwhile, we see the vampire sage, Lion, engage in a battle with the aggressor called the Darkness. Yagiri decides to get some rest and ends up sleeping in for 3 days straight while Tomochika waits for him in her room for all this time. While doing that, Makamoko tells her about someone keeping an eye over her with hostile intent, and she decides to wake Yagiri up and tells him to come to her room. Yagiri walks out and uses his hostility detection haki and then no-shots Yuuki's weakest bodyguard, Erika, with his instant death ability. After that, he walks into Tomochika's room and tells the hotel's reception that a woman collapsed in the hallway on his floor. At the same time, we also see Lion's immortal core rampaging across the city's street, riding over civilians and turning them into zombies, making them part of her army. Meanwhile, Yuuki notices that Erika's signal has vanished and he wonders what happened to her and sends 2 of his bodyguards to secure Tomochika while clearing a 150 floors deep dungeon by turning defeated monsters into his servants. On the other hand, Yagiri and Tomochika decide to get out of the hotel to avoid any fighting with Yuuki, but they get ambushed by the captain of his bodyguards, Riza the Ice Mage. She says that she is there to get Tomochika and freezes them both in rock-solid ice, but Yagiri kills the ice with his ability and makes it pathetically easy to shatter. This makes Riza shocked and she tries to cast another spell, but Yagiri kills the spell and then kills her staff as well, making her fall on her knees. After defeating her, Yagiri asks her if she can use magic without her wand and if there are any other wands that she is carrying on her. She says that she is a wand master and can only use magic through wands, and that she is only carrying a small spare one in her treasure chests. She also tells them about Yuuki's orders to capture Tomochika, and just then they get attacked by a doll that's crawling on the wall, but Tomochika puts it down using her martial arts skills, manifesting due to Makamoko's influence. It turns out they are Yuuki's other bodyguard, Chelsea's puppets, and Yagiri takes most of them down with his ability as well. Just then, Riza tries to get them by surprise using a small wand disguised as a hairpin, but Yagiri puts her down with his ability as well. After that, they walk out to make Chelsea stop fighting as well, and she gives up all the information she has about Yuuki and his plan. Seeing Riza and Chelsea getting defeated, Yuuki decides to lure them out using a fleet of cockroaches that he controls using his Dominator class ability, and makes them attack the couple, but Yagiri uses his Wi-Fi observation haki to locate him and puts him down in the dungeon. On the other hand, we see Yuuki's remaining bodyguards, Euphemia and Stephanie, wondering what they should do as they are now free from his contract. Stephanie decides to stay by his side and cry for a while Euphemia makes her way out of the dungeon and wonders why the entrance has so much light coming in. After walking out, she finds herself in a desert and then turns around to see the darkness engulfing the city and leaving only sand in its trail. She also finds Lion flying in the sky as she says that her attacks don't work on the formless darkness, and that there is nothing that she can do now to stop it. She flies down and casts a charm spell on her and turns her into her servant and makes her tell her everything she knows. Meanwhile, Yagiri and Tomochika make their way out of the hotel and wonder what was happening outside as everyone around them has turned into a zombie and someone is shouting on the speaker that the zombie party is about to begin. They both decide to escape the city while Lion tells Euphemia that she wants to know if Yagiri can kill her with his ability or not. At the same time, we see the captain of the Immortal Corps talking to the mayor of the city named Ryuta, who turns out to be Lion's servant as well. Masayuki asks Ryuta to hand over the city's key as it is an order from the sage Lion, and then uses the public speakers to tell the living people of the city that he is looking for these 2 people, showing Yagiri and Tomochika's pictures on all the screens in the city. He tells them that if they want to live and not turn into zombies, then they should get their ass moving, as he has also sealed the town with the barrier using the key. This makes Ryuta really mad as he has worked his butt off to make this city prosper, but he can't do anything against Lion's orders. Now, with everyone coming after Tomochika's Badonkadonks, Yogiri decides to head to the city square to make a deal with Masayuki himself. Once there, he tells him to lower the barrier as they want to board a train and go to the royal capital, but Masayuki asks them if they even know what kind of a situation they are in while raising his army of undead soldiers. He says that those who are already dead cannot be killed, but Yogiri simply wills them to death as well using his Opus ability. This makes Masayuki really shocked and he asks how that's possible, and Yogiri explains in the most Giga Chad way that he is the one who decides if something is dead or not. Hearing this, Masayuki becomes enraged and he says that there is no way such a ridiculous ability exists in this world as he begins to transform into his vampire werewolf mode, but Yogiri simply puts him down in between his monologue and transformation, saying that he doesn't need to wait for the cringiest loser in the anime to finish his lousy transformations. After that, he turns to Ryuta and asks him if he can make the barrier right again and asks him why everyone after them. He explains that they were in the lands controlled by Sage Lion and he doesn't know why she is interfering with Sage Shin's Sage candidacy test. Just then, they notice the people of the city walking towards them as if they have been possessed by something. Makamoko says that it looks like they are being controlled using some sort of spiritual link, and Ryuta says that if that's the case, he should be able to protect them using the city's barrier, but to his horror, the barrier doesn't work and it looks like Lion is interfering with it herself. With this, the civilians start attacking Yogiri and start falling down around him like dead moths as his ability automatically sends them to the underworld. Yogiri notices how seeing them die is pretty tough for the mayor and tells him to get close to him unless he wants to get hurt by them. He says that it feels like someone is trying to test the extent of his abilities and how something similar has happened to him in the past. At the same time, we see Lion looking over the city from afar alongside her newly acquired servant as the darkness gets closer to where Yogiri is. She creates a copy of herself without Yogiri's memories and tells her to go up in the sky and multiply and then to attack the city if they see something unusual happening like the darkness attacking or suddenly vanishing. She says that as these copies have no memory of Yogiri, their attacks should not generate any kind of hostility towards him, and even if he finds them using his observation haki like he found Yuuki, he should not be able to hurt her real body as it is different from the clones. On the other hand, we see Yogiri and the others noticing the darkness getting close to them and turning everything it touches into sand. Everyone wonders how to deal with it, but Yogiri says that he will simply make it die using his ability and make the darkness vanish into thin air. But suddenly, red meteorite-like attacks start raining down from the sky and destroying the city. Tomochika uses her sharp eyesight and says that they look like a red-haired lady wearing a red dress, and Ryuta confirms that it is Sage Lion and wonders why she is doing this and loses all respect for her. They wonder how to deal with this attack now as Yogiri says that they are too fast for him to see to use his ability, and they also don't have any hostility that he can trace. Just if they could get her to aim at him directly, he would be able to attack her back with his ability, and Ryuta suggests that they head to the open park area, which is most likely going to be attacked next according to the data he has been analyzing thanks to his bird's eye view skill that he got from being a mayor. He then teleports them to the park using his authority as the mayor of the city and vanishes away moments before Lion's copy attacks them. Tomochika manages to spot it just in time for Yogiri to locate her and put her down using his ability. Tomochika also defends them against the blast using Makamoko's powers and the shape-shifting material they got from the giant robot aggressor. On the other hand, we see Lion talking to Euphemia as she reveals that all of her puppets were defeated using Yogiri's ability. She says that now she just needed to create puppets with different memories so he can't target them all at once, but to her surprise, her real body gets killed in her home, which leads to her total demise. But before falling down, she feels relieved as it will be her way of getting a new life using one of her experimental bodies that she created biologically without any memories of her. Just then, we see a young pink-haired girl waking up in a coffin somewhere in a mansion as it picks up a projection stone that has the last message of Lion recorded in it. The message tells her who she is and how she wants her to live her own life and how she doesn't have any of her memories to prevent getting affected by Yogiri's ability. Back in the town, we see Yogiri and Tomochika returning to Ryuta as they reveal that they defeated the sage and ask him if it bothers him at all. Ryuta says that he has no respect for someone who harmed his precious civilians and gives them a military-grade car to travel to the royal capital. In the car, Tomochika asks Yogiri if he shouldn't be the one driving, but he says that he always ends up crashing the car while playing racing games, which makes Tomochika take up the steering herself. Makamoko says that she should be able to drive and operate all sorts of vehicles and weapons thanks to her innate talent as the heir to the Danara school, which makes no sense to her, but she simply goes along with it. While all of this is happening, we get to see a small glimpse of what the other sage candidates are up to in the forest. The samurai class candidate named Ryoko finishes her monster slaying for the day and heads back to her camp where she finds the American ninja class student, Carol, holding her phone in her hands. She asks her what she was doing in her camp with her phone, and she explains that she found it lost in the woods and was here to return it. She also reveals that she took the liberty of going through her applications to see what they were using to track Yagiri. It turns out they are both government spies from Japan and America respectively who joined Yagiri's class to keep an eye on him. The Americans have been using a satellite to keep an eye over him in the real world, but it has no use in this world. That's why Carol was looking at what the Japanese use, as they are the ones with the physical custody of him. Ryoko opens up her application, and to her horror an alert shows up saying that the first door of Alpha Omega is opening up. On the other side of the map, we see Tomochika driving like a panicked duck as she makes life-saving turns around the crazy mountain path to reach the capital. She eventually comes across a giant boulder in their way and decides to stop while looking at Yagiri, who is somehow sound asleep even with all of her screaming and this crazy ride. Just then, we get to see what Yagiri is dreaming about as we dive into a flashback from his childhood, when this office lady first met him and gave him his name, Yagiri, and taught him how to shake hands with other people. This lady is called Asaka Takatu and sees her signing an agreement form while giving an interview for a special job. The agreement says that she won't complain even if she dies during the course of her term. At first, she decides to walk away instead of signing her soul to the devil, but the interviewer, Yukio, manages to convince her by telling her that she would get retirement benefits if she agrees to it. After signing the agreement, she asks if they are some kind of super secret evil organization or something, but the scientists say that they are a respectable association who conduct special human experiments for the betterment of their society. He then tells her that her job is to babysit a monster. She asks him what it was like, but Yukio says that he has never seen it himself and all he knows is that it can kill anyone just by thinking. Its code name is Alpha Omega, and they reckon that by providing modern education and basic humanity to it, they might be able to prevent it from exterminating all life forms from the face of the planet. He tells her that she has her teacher's license, so she is just the right person for this. He then takes her to an underground chamber and tells her that he can't go beyond this line and that everything she might want to know about regarding this job is written in this manual before skedaddling out of there. After getting everything she needs, she walks into the chamber and opens up the massive vault gate with her card key and finds out that she is in some kind of artificially created facility with a natural-looking sky and a background scenery as well. She looks at the manual to find the house where this monster is supposed to be living, and after going inside, she only finds a young kid sitting in the living room. This makes her really angry, and she says that it's ridiculous to lock a kid in a place like this. She takes him out and tells him to play with the tadpoles or something, but the kid notices a shadow demon behind her and kills it using his powers. He tells her that these things sometimes come there to attack him, but they are nothing to worry about. Besides that, it's about to get dark, so if it's alright with her, he would like to play tomorrow instead of right now. Hearing all this calms Asaka down, and she shakes his hand and introduces herself by name. She asks for his name and he says that they call him Alpha Omega here, and before he came there, they used to call him Lord Akakashi. Just then, they both hear their tummies rumbling and decide to go inside and get something to eat. Asaka realizes that she will have to do the cooking as well, but being as good of a chef as an idiot sandwich, she ends up making some instant ramen while the kid takes a bath. During their meal, she asks him for the name that his mom used to call him by, but he doesn't know what that is, so she ends up naming him herself and gives him the name Yagiri Takatu, which makes him really happy. She then teaches him how to introduce himself by shaking hands and saying nice to meet you. Just then, we see Yagiri getting woken up by Tomochika, who tells him that they have run into a dead end. They both decide to take some other route and back up, but the car runs into a small dragon on their way back. They both get out of the car and Yagiri takes care of the monster before a fleet of dragons come out of nowhere and start flying towards them as well. Yagiri no-shots them all as well, and after that, they get to meet a golden lightning dragon who says that they pass and starts flying away, but Yagiri stops it and tells it to come back and to tell them what it meant by that, or else he will do some pest control on it as well. The dragon comes back and transforms into a little kid and explains that she was testing them to see if they were worthy of seeking the Swordmaster. They ask her who this Swordmaster was, which makes her surprised as she thinks that they were there to take the Swordmaster's test. They tell her that they were just on their way to the royal capital and got lost, to which she introduces herself as Attila and offers to help them if they agree to go see the Swordmaster with her. After agreeing, she takes them into a mystical forest where the Swordmaster is gathering all the test takers. There they meet the old guy named Urabe, who announces that if in 10 minutes there's not half of them left there, all of them would fail, which marks the start of a massive battle royale. The first one to get sliced and diced is this unlucky loser, followed by a bunch of others, including a shady group of magicians that Yagiri sends to hell with his ability. They both also get defended by a righteous knight named Rick and manage to save the beta loser who got cut in half named Lionel thanks to a special stone called the Apology Stone that gives him random powers and buffs. After that, they all head to the next destination of the test, and Lionel also explains that he got these stones from a goddess to make up for the bad luck he is suffering from. He says that he gets new stones every night, and these stones can be used to summon random items and effects through a gacha system. As they get close to their next destination, the miasma in the area starts getting lethally thicker, and it even makes Lionel vomit on the ground. But then, Makamoko notices that the miasma has suddenly disappeared, and she wonders what caused it while we see Yagiri acting weird. After that, they head up the tower where Urabe shows them a giant sealing spell with the Dark King sealed inside it alongside the ancient sword master who ran her sword through both of them while sealing them in this seal where time flows extremely slowly. Urbane explains that it is their duty as the S-Rod Master to defeat the Dark King once he is freed, but then a magician girl reveals herself and throws a massive fireball at the Dark King, saying she will defeat him once and for all, but the spell simply becomes stagnant in the time seal and she realizes just how dumb she is. Rick tells Yagiri that the magician is called Frederica and she is his friend who told him to take the Sword Master's test in the first place. After that, the examiners tell everyone that they need to reach the bottom floor of the tower while defeating monsters and clearing different tasks to earn points. They need to earn 100 points within the next 24 hours and make it to the bottom of the tower as well to clear the test. Meanwhile, Tomochika looks down at the Dark King and asks Yagiri if he can kill him as well or not, and Yagiri tells her something which makes her really shocked. After hearing him out, they both decide to hurry down the tower and join up with Rick and Lionel and make their way down. Thanks to everyone ahead of them, they get to walk through without worrying about a lot of monsters and traps, but Lionel still manages to get himself killed from an arrow trap. His apology stones help him through it all as usual, and they even run into one of the Knights of the Divine King named Teresa, who is supposed to be Urabe's subordinate, but she has turned rogue after killing one too many people during the test, and is now on a killing spree. Rick struggles against her for a bit, and it looks like they are going to show us an epic battle, but Yagiri puts a stop to all of this using his ability, and tells everyone to hurry on. After that, they reach the 98th floor, which turns out to be a safe zone with lots of rooms for the participants to rest in as well. They all decide to go their own ways from here. Rick decides to walk forward. Lionel decides to rest till midnight to get new stones, while Tomochika and Yagiri decide to take a good nap. At midnight, Lionel gets a special anniversary event drawn from his gacha system, and manages to summon the goddess who called him to this world and gave him the apology stones. She says that she is there just to check on him and then takes her leave, while Yagiri and Tomochika simply fall asleep in the same bed. The next morning, when they wake up, they see Makamoko half stuck in the wall, and she says that something is making all the souls in the tower get sucked up towards the top. Yagiri helps her out by killing the sucking mechanism and then tells Tomochika to prepare herself, as from this point onwards he would be killing everyone indiscriminately as they are in a place of danger. She says that it's fine and that she has already steeled her nerves and that she isn't hypocritical enough to blame him while he is doing it to save her. Hearing this makes Yagiri really happy inwardly, and he becomes all shy and red and says that he's hungry, and they order some room service for their meal. On the other hand, we see a sage named AI fight against another summoned sage named Rikudo, who abandoned his duties as a sage after coming to this world and established a community of beastkin in the forest, and decided to live there peacefully. AI's job is to assassinate sages and sage candidates who have forsaken their duties and possess the power called Just World, which allows her to manipulate the powers given to herself and others by God to the highest degree. She kills Rikudo, and her dagger tells her that her next targets are the sage candidates Yagiri and Tomochika, and tells her to head towards them. On her way, she ends up getting chased after by a fat who turns out to be none other than Damon, who has been wandering in the forest since episode 1 following Yagiri's commands. He seems to have gotten rid of his servant collar somehow and reveals that he was taken in by Rikudo, but now that he is dead, he wants to follow AI and begs her to let him become her slave. With that, they both head towards Yagiri's place and run into the Golden Dragon from earlier. Damon worries that AI won't be able to beat the dragon as her ability allows her to only deal with the cheat skills the other worlders receive, but she says that she can interfere with any natural phenomenon and make it just like she believes it to be, but it doesn't work if her target has a high enough luck stat. She then makes the dragon unable to fly because it's too big, and before she can do much else, an aggressor by the name of Hedgehog appears on the spot and kills the dragon with its sharp blades. After that, it vanishes back into the distance while showing the way to the Swordmaster's tower to AI. Meanwhile, Yagiri and Tomochika make it through almost half of the tower until they run into a silver-haired guy who accuses them of cheating. The guy introduces himself as Iglesia, the creator of the tower, and tells Yagiri that he feels sad because he has been bypassing all of his traps by killing them using his ability. He says that he is too dangerous to be left alone. He starts preparing some big spell while saying that he is going to give them a choice, but Yagiri eats him to the other world saying he's in a hurry. After that, they go to the next area where they find another dominator using his harem of girls to fight another test taker who turns out to be a half-demon like Euphemia. Yagiri asks for permission to pass by as he's not interested in fighting, but the dominator says that he will let them through if they defeat his bodyguards in a 3 versus 3 battle. Yagiri accepts and no-shots them all with his ability and starts walking forward, but this makes the dominator really mad and he tries to stand up to cast a spell, but Yagiri puts him down just as fast, calling him a liar. Seeing all this, the half-demon girl says that she has a request to make of him and they decide to at least hear her out. The girl introduces herself as Theodisia and explains that she is looking for her younger sister. She says that she came here because she heard that some of her people were trapped here and helping her might come off as being against the Swordmaster. Yagiri says that he has already made a mess out of his tower, so he won't be really fond of him anyways, so he has no issues with helping her out. He then asks her if she has any clues about where her people could be, and she says that she can feel their presence and it seems like they are somewhere underground. Just then, Rick, Frederica and Lionel walk into the arena as well, and it turns out Rick and Frederica were helping Lionel gain some points as well because he is a sissy loser. After that, they all reach the bottom floor where Urabe announces that they have all passed the test and have now become the Knights of the Divine King. Just then, the tower's maintainers walk in and tell them that the first barrier around the Dark King has been undone, and for some reason the tower isn't working anymore. This shocks Urabe and he wonders what happened, but then someone suddenly destroys the whole tower above them with a blast and reveals himself to be a high-class demon who is accompanied by another of his kind. Their goal seems to be the resurrection of the Dark King and they prepare to fight Urabe and his knights. The demon seems to possess the power to turn off the humans around him, while the other one seems to be too proficient in magic as he blocks Frederica's fire magic with his bare hands, and then turns her staff alongside her arm into a biscuit and gives her a taste, saying she's pretty sweet. Frederica wonders if she will now become a red-haired emperor of the sea, but quickly remembers that she is just a side character for this minor arc. Seeing all this, Lionel decides to use the remaining limited edition gacha roll and uses all of his apology stones to summon some sort of miracle that would help them deal with the demons, but it ends up summoning the goddess from earlier, much to his horror. He asks her if she would vanish again, but she says that this time she will grant his wish of taking care of everything, and then walks up to the demons, and to everyone's surprise, they both bow down in front of her and reveal that she is actually the wife of the Dark King. She has been summoning and manipulating heroes to release her husband from the seal, but always failed due to the Swordmaster. But thanks to this unlucky piece of garbage named Lionel, she managed to get rid of the barriers this time. Lionel asks her if she was lying about taking care of everything and granting his wish, and she says that she didn't lie and that she will take care of them all by destroying all of humanity, thus leaving nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, Yagiri, Tomochika and Theodisia decide to go underground to find her people, and thanks to Yagiri's powers manage to kill the time-space barrier that is hiding the bottom floor. Tomochika also notices some high-speed robots zoom past them with some blades, but they decide to ignore it and focus on the underground room in front of them. Once inside, they find the room to be full of fluid chambers, with Theodisia's people being used as guinea pigs for horrible experiments and to use their magic to support the barrier around the Dark King. Theodisia decides to put an end to their misery using her own hands and then resolves to take revenge from the Swordmaster. With that, they all head back up to see what was going on. On the other hand, we see Lionel trying to stall the goddess to create an opportunity for the Swordmaster to slay her. While doing so, he makes the goddess reveal that she had been waiting for all sorts of obstacles to get out of her way, including the creator of the tower, Iglesia, as he would have been able to restore the barrier instantly. Besides that, she was also worried about the goddess killer who somehow suddenly died during the test, and now she is able to break the barrier to release her husband. With that, she destroys the barrier's core and releases the Divine King and the Dark King from their time seal, but to everyone's surprise, the Dark King simply falls down into the river with his dead ass and drowns away. They all wonder how this could have happened, while we find out that it was Yagiri's doing and that he accidentally killed the Dark King in response to the high-density miasma in the region that was about to harm him. Just then, Theodisia takes advantage of all the confusion and slices the Swordmaster in half and takes her revenge. This makes Rick and the others really surprised, and they wonder if she is an enemy. At the same time, the high-speed robotic aggressor, Hedgehog, also appears in the battle zone and assassinates the goddess and zooms away. The two demons who started all this heal her back to full health and rally their forces to attack humans to take revenge for killing their king, but Yagiri simply no-shots them all with his ability, and tells them that he doesn't want any drama. The whole thing makes the goddess lose her mind and she starts firing random abilities in all directions. Tomochika asks Yagiri if he is going to do anything about her, but he says that the goddess didn't do anything to him, so he has no reason to fight her. On the other hand, we see AI dragging Damon's towards the tower as she dodges all the random attacks using her absurd ability. Once she arrives there, she uses her appraisal skill to tell Rick that he can put the goddess down using his holy sword, which he does, and then turns towards Yagiri and Tomochika to see what they were all about. Before fighting them, she uses her eye on Yagiri to check his stats, but it shows her the end of everything in him, and this makes her sweat her soul out as she decides to eat her ass out of there before handing Damon over to Yagiri. Yagiri wonders what she was all about, but then turns to Damon and asks him how he managed to get out of his collar. He says that he never said that its effect was permanent, apologies for deceiving them. After that, Rick talks to them about Theodosia and what she did, and Yagiri tells him to see what they found in the basement, and if he still decides to fight them, then he will help Theodosia. Rick asks him what he can do with his tiny stick, but the Divine King stops him and tells him that it was actually Yagiri who put down the Dark King and all the demons around them, which makes Rick really surprised as he apologizes for his rude behavior. After that, they all decide to part ways. Rick, Frederica, Lionel and the Divine King go to the royal capital, while Yagiri and Tomochika decide to go there on their own as well. Theodosia reveals the name of her younger sister, who turns out to be Euphemia, and Yagiri and Tomochika tells her that they heard this name while walking through one of the cities on their way and tell her about the routes they took. Before leaving, Rick also gives them a couple of pendants with the emblem of the Royal Knights and says that they should show these to the guards in the capital if they ever need his help. With this, Yagiri and Tomochika start their journey towards the capital while leaving Damon to his wits. But unfortunately for him, he ends up getting approached by one of the demons that attacked the tower, and he tells him to follow him. While all of this is happening, we see Shin sipping on some sweet tea as her knight reports to her about AI and Yagiri. She says that she shouldn't interfere with the sage candidates and decides to summon someone from Yagiri's world to ask them about him. The summoned guy turns out to be one of the Japanese scientists who were keeping a watch over him, and when he finds out that she is the one who made Alpha Omega disappear from their world, he calls her a savior and thanks her. But then, he notices a warning on his device which says that as a sea-level employee, he is not allowed to be this close to Alpha Omega, and it makes him self-destruct into a pile of pizza sauce right in front of the sage. On the other side of the map, back to where the bus was attacked by the dragon, we see Ayaka suddenly gaining consciousness as she gets brought back to life by some form of sentient chat PT. The AI tells her that she needs to acquire a huge amount of nutritions to initiate her recovery, or else she would end up dead in 30 minutes. Ayaka decides to munch on some delicious rotten dragon ass, and let's talk more about that in the comments. Meanwhile, Yagiri and Tomochika arrive at the royal capital and get stopped by the royal knights, who tell them to get out of their car and to show them their IDs. They explain that they got the car from the mayor of Hanabusa City and that they are sage candidates who are there for a trial. The guard checks them out using an appraisal tool, but Yagiri shows them the pendants that Rick gave them, and it makes all of them get on their knees. They explain that it is the mark of the royal family and gives them the pass to enter the city. Just then, the youngest prince, David, arrives on the scene and demands that they show them their swords as the Knights of the Divine King, and Tomochika ends up accepting his challenge to a duel when they fail to show him any swords. In the duel, she showcases the martial arts of her family and ends up freeing David's future generations from the pain of getting born. Getting hit in his precious eggs turns David into a gentleman as he offers to give them a tour of the city and explains how the city walls were created thousands of years ago by the great sage, Iglesia, the same guy who created that tower. He also tells them that the royal capital is built upon an underground barrier that seals a Dark Lord, much like the Tower of the Swordmaster, which surprises Yagiri and Tomochika as they didn't expect there to be more than one Dark Lord. After that, Yagiri asks Tomochika if they will forgive their classmates or should they take revenge from them, and Tomochika decides to first meet them and see what kind of attitude they take up with them. With that, they join their classmates at the royal palace as they all meet the king. The three perverts from the class, known now as the three pervy beta lords, decide to exert their dominance by revealing that one of them has the ability to stop time as he approaches the king and acts rudely towards him, but the king cuts of his fingers and reveals that their powers get significantly weak if they try to fight anyone related to the royal family, and that they have been granted the protection of the sages. After that, he sits back down on his throne and says that to become sages, they must accomplish a great achievement in 1 month or else they will all fail. After that, the king walks away and Tomochika and Yagiri make their presence known officially. They all talk it out and eventually Yagiri and Tomochika agree to join them without any violence. They make up a cover story that Yagiri got the skill to kill insects instantly and Tomochika got the skill to create special armor that only works on herself, and thanks to these skills they manage to escape from the dragon. The class captain says that he still believes they did the right thing by leaving them behind as bait, as the survival of many was his priority. With all of that out of the way, they all start wondering about ways to pass the sage exam and eventually end up getting help from the royal family that suggests that they go down the underground dungeon and defeat the Dark Lord as their accomplishment. With this, all of them form groups and go underground, led by David and Rick, who eventually arrives at the royal capital with the Divine King as well. While Tomochika is busy busting her ass off in the underground dungeon, Yagiri joins the group of the losers of their class, including two other guys, one with the ability to cook and the other with the ability to read anything. Soon, another guy named Seiichi joins them, who has the ability called Death God, which is pretty similar to Yagiri's ability of instantly killing their target, but it is an inferior version of Yagiri's power. The guy sits down in front of Yagiri and reveals that he is with the cult, which is yet another organization which hails him as the god of death and is also the one that refers to him as Lord Akakashi. The guys say that he had been keeping an eye on him using his mechanical eye, but it has stopped working since they came to this world, and then walks away saying that he will be happy to serve him if he needs his help. After that, the other two spies also make contact with Yagiri and Tomochika and apologize to him for deceiving him all this time. Yagiri says that he doesn't mind as long as they don't cause him any trouble and lets them focus on their survival in this new world, and says that he wants to meet the sage Shin as she might know of a way to get back to their world. While all of this is happening, we find out that Euphemia got to meet up with Lion's new body and decides to serve her. The new body names herself Risley and takes Euphemia along with her on a journey to find the guy named Yagiri. Besides that, Shin goes to see AI in the Sage's world and finds out that she is suffering from PTSD after looking at Yagiri. She becomes worried and says that she needs to get more information on what he actually is and decides to go meet his classmates. At the same time, the demon spawn, Lute, teams up with Damon as he knows about Yujiri and takes him to the royal capital to unseal the younger and much stronger sister of the late Dark King, who is residing under the royal capital. Once they get inside the city, they go to a tavern and try to get information on ways to get inside the underground dungeon. But then they see the three pervy idiots there, and Damon says that he has to avoid getting found out by them or it will be troublesome for him. Just then, Ayaka suddenly flies into the tavern and starts beating one of the idiots until he's turned into tomato sauce. She tells the other two to go back and tell everyone that she will not forgive them and that she would take her revenge in front of them for leaving her behind as bait. Seeing all this makes Damon really worried as well, but then Shin appears in front of them and she asks Damon about Yujiri. He says that he doesn't know much about him but gets the information about the entrance to the underground dungeon from her. Shin says that it will be fun to watch what they do and then walks back to her sage world. There, at night, while talking to her servant, she gets an unexpected guest who turns out to be Haruto, the analyst from the Sage candidates. He tells Shin that he found his way to her room using his problem-solving skills and then requests her to extend the deadline on their exam. Shin says that she will consider it in exchange for him taking care of Yujiri, to which he smiles and agrees. After this, Haruto goes back and hires an assassin with the Sage and Spirit's powers and tells him to kill Yagiri. On the other hand, the other Sage candidates become worried for their life as they fear Ayaka coming after them. One of them, named Riona, who has the ability to enhance her strength, finds Ayaka and tries to snipe her down with high-speed rocks, but Ayaka tanks it like the Giga Chad she is and goes on to fight with her. She single-handedly destroys her ass and soul, but Riona says that she isn't at her full power because of that stupid king's suppressing quirk that's active throughout the royal capital. Hearing this, Ayaka lets Riona go and heal herself and flies away to burn the king's royal ass to ashes. After taking care of him, she returns to fight Riona at full power and proceeds to utterly destroy her once again. The next night, she fights the cook loser, who somehow manages to actually give her an actual fight as he extrapolates his power by assuming her to be an ingredient, and then using his chef status to fight her using a kitchen knife and a shadow clone jutsu, saying that it is an essential skill for a cook as they often need many hands to keep the kitchen moving. But even after all of this, Ayaka ends up making a roasted barbecue out of him using her draconic flames. Meanwhile, we find out that the reader guy actually has the ability to see the future, which writes itself in his notebook as soon as he makes a choice. While all of this is happening, Damon and Lute go down to the underground dungeon and find out that the Dark King's sister managed to break the seal on her own but decided to stay there to avoid making her brother mad. She suffers from a severe brother complex and loves him a lot, which makes her be good to Lute and Damon as well when they bring her brother's key to her. But when Lute tells her that her brother is dead and who did it, it makes her really mad, and she takes both his arms and says that she will revive her brother and starts engulfing everything around her using her spell. On the other hand, we see Shin arriving in the dining hall to meet the Sage candidates after Haruto gets an extension from her. She tells everyone that she is not happy with how the Sage exam is turning out and thinks that it is too easy, so she wants them all to fight each other until only one of them is left. and that person would be the only one to become the sage. This marks the beginning of the battle royal as the death god ability guy tries to use it on Shin, but she says that it doesn't work on her as she completely heals herself with a level up and then knocks him out with a flick from her fingers. Meanwhile, Yogiri is chilling outside and he notices David sleepwalking as if he is under some kind of spell and watches him jump into a ravine. He tries to help him and ends up falling down with him. Underground, the Dark King's sister named Mana turns into her liquid mana form and starts taking over everything in her sight as she starts gushing out of the royal capital with extreme force. While falling down, Yujiri saves himself and David by killing their momentum using his ability, and then meets up with Damon, who is running away from Mana for his life as well. They all end up catching an elevator that takes them back up, and once there, Yujiri goes to meet up with Tomochika to find out what was happening. She tells him about the battle royal and they end up fighting a bunch of their classmates as well. Meanwhile, Ayaka decides that it is a great day to take her revenge and joins the battle royal as well. She ends up fighting a girl who has the power to summon all sorts of modern weapons, and when she starts losing the battle, she summons a nuclear bomb like a sore loser and drops it on Ayaka. The explosion destroys everything around it and also takes Yujiri and the others in its effect, but Yujiri saves them all by killing the laws of physics, because why not? Ayaka manages to survive the explosion by giving up her human form and permanently transforms into her dragon form. Once healed up, she decides to make sure that everyone is dead and finds Yujiri and the others alive in the middle of a flaming zone. The Chak PT in her brain starts speaking up, and it turns out that it's a technology from the future specifically developed to counter the instant death ability of Yujiri by becoming undetectable by him. This effect works to a certain extent, but Yujiri simply kills Ayaka as well when he sees the massive dragon approaching them. After that, Shin arrives in front of them and says that she had been wanting to talk to Yujiri as she heard that he is going to wipe her out. Just then, Yujiri uses his ability to kill one of her ankles and then starts off by killing her fingers and shows her who is the real boss there. He then asks her to tell him about ways to get back to their old world, but she simply teleports back to her sage world and tries to heal herself. All of her attempts fail and it makes her worried, but then Yujiri starts killing more of her parts and even starts attacking her beloved servant, Yuichi. This makes Shin give up and she comes back to him and explains that there is no way for them to return as the link between their worlds has already vanished. Hearing this, Yujiri tells her to tell him about their old world's coordinates and also asks her for ways to gather the necessary mana. She takes out a philosopher's stone out of her chest and says that it is the source of immortality for the sages and should be enough to power their journey if they collect enough of them. All the sages have them, but the stone loses its power if a sage dies. Hearing this, Yujiri decides to let her leave and goes back to the royal palace with Tomochika, Damon, and the two spies including Prince David. Once they are gone, Mana materializes herself in front of Shin and captures her using her powers and absorbs her in herself while calling her a pathetic loser of a saint. Shin tells her to remember the name of the person who will kill her while referring to Yujiri before drowning in her. On the other hand, Yujiri and the others walk into the castle and find the Archbishop blabbering something about starting his villain arc and being happy about the awakening of Mana, but Yujiri shuts him up with his ability because he's too annoying. Just then, Mana materializes herself in front of them and says that she will destroy them as well, but Yujiri shuts her up as well and ends the final boss fight in a second. With the kingdom now saved, David flies out of the castle on a ship with the spies, while Yujiri follows behind by clinging to Tomochika, who glides down like a sexy Batwoman. Once out, they notice that Damon has escaped yet again, and Yujiri says that it's fine as he didn't like his face to be around anyways. After that, he says that he will now go look for the other Philosopher's Stone so he and Tomochika can return to their world, and says that he would split up from the rest of them. The spies agree to walk their own ways as well and decide to go along with David. At the same time, a couple of aggressors fly down into the capital to see Mana's destruction and find a hurt Haruto in the mess. They decide to take him with them and fly away. While all of this happened in the royal capital, we get to see a little bit of Theodosia, who ended up meeting again with her sister while saving some of her people from slave traders. There she joins her and Risley and starts heading towards the royal capital because the little pink-haired girl wants to meet Yujiri. They arrive just in time to see Yujiri and Tomochika deciding to go out and look for the other Philosopher's Stones. Seeing them, Risley jumps out and hugs Yujiri and says that she wants him to marry her while offering him her Philosopher's Stone. Yujiri wonders what all this was about, and Theodosia fills him in on how Risley is obsessed with him because she learnt about him from her old self after waking up. With that, they all get inside Risley's carriage and ride away towards their next destination while Yujiri decides to take a nap. Meanwhile, we see the Divine King watching over the capital from a tower as she wonders how someone could defeat Mana so easily and decides that it is too dangerous to let someone like Yujiri roam around the world like this and starts following him. And that's how Season 1 of my instant death ability is so overpowered comes to an end.